Hi guys. It's been a while. I got sick for a while, and before that I got really into writing, but I'm back now with an awful haircut. That's not none of that's the point today. Point that I'm getting into is the other day when I started getting better from my cold. I was doing a tarot reading with Diana, which is an Italian goddess I work with. So I was doing a reading with her, and she gave me some cards. It's like Six of Cups, the Fool, the Magician, and a few other cards. And I heard a journaling prompt in my head very strongly, and that's pretty sure it's what she is trying to tell me. Saying, number one, why did you get into witchcraft? How has getting into folk magic changed your view and your practice of witchcraft? And what stayed the same? And I'm not going to go into all of it because obviously witchcraft can be very personal for a lot of people. A lot of people who practice magic do it because they felt like they had no power, and that is very much my experience personally. I had a very bad childhood, not because of like my mom or anything, but like I had a very rough dad. I had other violent experiences as a child, especially as a young child. And I felt like I had no freedom. That's not the number one reason why I got into witchcraft. The number one reason why I got into witchcraft was because I was working on the story. It was like a young adult story, like a supernatural boarding school, like House of Night, something like that, kind of inspired by Twilight even. And I wanted to make it so that every student and every person who was a staff at the school, anyone who was supernatural, vampire, werewolf, witch, whatever, had like their own god, and a lot of them were Greek gods because I love Greek mythology. Greek mythology was always my thing. I was so excited when I got to work with Aphrodite because I love Greek mythology so much. Albeit I was very nasty to her back when it was just Greek mythology and I didn't believe in anything. But that's not the point. The point is, I was doing my research for it, and I opened up to like stuff about paganism and like worshiping the gods as if they were like real gods. I was like, huh? And I knew that I had a very close friend at the time who I no longer talk to, who also practiced witchcraft. She was pagan, stuff like that. I didn't really understand what paganism was at the time. I just didn't care, so I just left it alone because at the time I had hated all religion. All religion was bad to me. I was like one of those new atheist bros who just tries to ruin religion for everyone else because I had a bad time. Okay, that's a little better. And so when I asked her about it, she started telling me all kinds of stuff, and I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. And I started looking into it more and more. And I wasn't sure if I believed in it or not, but I was skeptical, so I gave it some shots. I prayed to some gods. I forget what ones I started with. I know that one was Rhiannon, who is a Celtic goddess, and there's another one. I think it was Persephone. And Persephone and Rhiannon both had been very active when I prayed to them, especially Rhiannon is amazing. And so I started experimenting more and more with it. Soon I learned about like witchcraft and seeing what I could do with it. I started off by getting 2, I think, crystals. I may have gotten 3, I don't know. But I got at least an amethyst and a rose quartz. And so I started meditating because I read that the best way to start witchcraft is by just doing your research, meditating, stuff like that. And I thought, okay, so amethyst, that has to do with like spiritual insight, right? So I meditated one day and I just had my amethyst after it was cleansed and charged right on my forehead, like where you'd imagine a third eye would be. So I'm laying down, I'm meditating, I'm trying to connect to any goddesses or gods that are around. And boom, it just starts vibrating. I was like, oh shit, I didn't know that was a thing. I had to ask my friend who I no longer talk to about it. She said, yeah, all crystals have a different vibration, different vibrations have different things. Amethyst is my birthstone. It's a stone I'm very close to. I'm very psychically inclined. I had psychic experiences as a child, although I completely rejected them after a very bad experience as a teenager. That's a different story for a different video. And so I was like, okay, so I started doing more experiments. I tried doing like a protection spell, a cleansing spell, all kinds of stuff like that. And the more I got into it, the more I really got into it, is like naturally I picked up on it. Some people would say it's a cultural thing. Some people would say some people are just born more gifted. I personally don't think that's the case. I've always relied very heavily on the spirits in my practice to teach me, and I believe that's what brought it all on. So that's how I got into it. The midst of learning about it, finding interest, being curious, trauma, all of it together, and eventually it came to give me more power from my trauma and to be able to heal. And this isn't witchcraft based, but it is pagan based. When I was still working very heavily with Aphrodite, I considered myself to be a devotee of her. She had led me towards DBT, which I did a video on before about healing. And oh my god, it made the biggest change, and I genuinely don't think I would have figured it out without her. She literally led me to it. She blessed my life so much in so many different ways. That's not the only way, but that's what I wanted to point out right now. And so that's how I started it. And then the ways that my practice began, a lot of it was very nature-based, which it still very much is. I am an animist, so I believe that everything has an inherent spirit. I prey on herbs, I prey on plants. This is my poinsettia, Anna, who I love very much. Which is very fitting because my saint of 2022 is Saint Anna, and I love her. She's one of my favorites. But yeah, it was very nature-based. I used to live near a pond, and I used to go there and like talk to the plants, talk to the animals. I'd collect something if I thought it would be good. I would leave an offering, usually like some water, or like if I had room for it, anything else I thought would help the nature, stuff like that. But for me, originally my practice was very nature-based, but it was also very spell jar based and very energy work based. Also very creative. A very big spell type that I used to do was I would start off by meditating. I would use amethyst, and depending on what kind of spell it was, some other crystal. Sometimes, like I would use rose quartz if I was doing a love spell, or like a lust spell, a spell to feel more beautiful, a spell to make something like that happen. If I was doing a spell to help my menstrual cramps or someone else's, I would use rose quartz for that as well. And then after I would do the meditation with the crystals, I would like visualize something happening. Like say you wanted to help someone to stop thinking about someone else, and this is a spell that I've actually done. I would picture like this big heart, and on one side it's like one person's name, on the other side another person's name, and if you don't know both people's names, you can just like replace it with whoever this person is, like a tag lock. If it's like someone's best friend that they can't get over, then you think like Jason's best friend who only wants to be friends or something like that. And then you just picture it splitting apart in two and like that, And then what I would do after that is I would do it like drawing wise to the big heart, the names, and then actually rip it apart. First I draw a line through it, and then I tear it up. I would keep the two separate pieces in different parts of the house, or I would bury one even to make sure that that person was forgotten about if it was more of a long-term thing rather than like if this was somebody that you're never going to see again, I would bury the other person's name. If it was someone who's like friendship, then I would just keep them apart. And that spell worked very, very well for me for such a long time until I started getting into Italian folk magic or Strigonetia. And spell jars, you just put some stuff in the jar, you have the reasons, you pray over it, you shake it up, you pray to whatever spirits you're working with, stuff like that. It worked great for me for a very long time. When I started getting into Italian folk magic, no. So I guess I was always a little bit of an animist, but it really started coming out very strongly when I got into folk magic because animism is a very big part of animism. But also, like, spell jars, energy work still works, but not in the same way for me at all. It's like back before that, I used to charge my crystals. I would charge herbs. I would charge whatever I was using. I don't do that so much anymore because the spirit is within the rose quartz. It does need cleansing, but I don't believe that it needs charging. It's just a matter of if you connect to that rose quartz or not. But spell jars stopped working for me. What started working really well for me, though, are oils. I started off by making one oil to bring new opportunities, and it worked so well. I did watch other videos to get ideas for it, but I also had a little bit of my own ideas, and then I asked all the herbs and spices, the crystal that I put in it, which was the tiger's eye, stuff like that. Please bless this. St. Anthony. Did I pray St. Anthony for it? No, I don't think so. Who did I pray to for it? I prayed to Diana. Who else did I pray to? Juno, because part of it was about, like, being able to meet a spouse. I just prayed over it, shook it up when it was done, kept it in the dark for a few weeks, kept shaking it every day for a few weeks, and then I just applied it to whoever I planned on applying it to. It worked so well. So many people came out of the woodwork so fast. It's like that. Like, so many people. Within a week, I had like 10 people reaching out to me out of nowhere who haven't talked to me in like 3+ years. It was wild. I had one guy basically tell me that we were going to live together without me saying I wanted to live with him or not. And besides that, like, it's just, connecting to the ancestors. I give someone in my family water every day. Sometimes I like to go by culture instead. Like, I'll say, Italian ancestors, I invite you here today. Usually I do that on Tuesdays. On Thursdays, I give it to my indigenous ancestors. I'm not 100% sure what tribe my family is from, but I just tell them indigenous ancestors, I invite you to be here. I also invite the indigenous people who would originally be in this spot, which are the Lenape. And I just invite them. I do readings with them. I give them offerings depending on who they are. Like, if it's a Tuesday, I might make some kind of pasta or something and offer it to them, especially the more recent generations who have died, who did live in America and weren't very connected to their Italian ancestry, but of course they loved pasta because, who doesn't love pasta for the most part? There's some allergies, of course, and some people just don't like popular things, which is fine. It took me a long time to get into spaghetti personally, but I just do that. I spend time with them. I do research and ask them to be there with me, to guide me, find the research I need to do, stuff like that. It helps me so much. I don't know what that sound was. But yeah, I do that. Sometimes I'll get like a revelation from a spirit, or like they're telling me, look up this thing, something like that. That's even how I found out about Italian folk magic to begin with. I just heard in my head to look up Italian folk magic and the name Mary, and that's when I found Italian folk magic by Mary Grace Ferrin, which was absolutely insane to me. I was thinking, wow, I don't know who you are, but you literally just gave me a book title and part of an author's name. Thank you. I always wanted to be connected to a culture, but never felt like I could be because I was so separated from it all. And this has really changed my life. I work primarily with Italian folk magic, but I also do try to include some Irish stuff because I am also part Irish. I would love to work with more indigenous stuff in the future, but I'm not too sure how that's gonna go. I don't even know what tribe my family's from, and obviously I want to be respectful of it. I would obviously talk to like a tribe's elder person first, talk to them and see how that would go, and obviously talk to other people from like whatever tribe that is and see what they think, see how I can be respectful of it, because yes, it's in my blood, but also there have been many people in my family who have suffered over it, and that's really all you can do. And the big picture is you can do your best to be respectful of everyone, and you can also acknowledge what's yours, what's not yours. Like I know a little bit about Romani magic, Romani culture, Romani religions, which is very interesting to me, but also I myself am not Romani. My sister, who is one of my closest friends, is Romani. That's all her area. It is not my place at all. And then obviously there's open stuff, like I still work with the Greek gods, I still work with Aphrodite and Apollo, stuff like that. And it depends too, like sometimes cultures mix together. I used to get very strong calls from Oshun. I never acted on the calls because it just didn't feel right to me, but I always felt a very close connection to her, but I just left it out because it felt like it wasn't right to do. I acknowledged her, I said thank you for being around. I'm not going to work with you because it doesn't feel right to me. Thank you and goodbye. And I guess that's really how my practice changed, other than trying to learn more about like the cultures, the history, stuff like that. If you're practicing a type of folk magic, you really have to understand it. It's like if you want to be like a genuinely good person in America, or just in general, there are certain things that you do have to learn. You have to learn, it's like you have to learn all type stuff, like what blood is on your hands, what blood is not on your hands, how did your people suffer, how did your people cause other people to suffer. And that's so important. Like you can't just say, okay, I'm baby, I'm completely innocent. I've never done anything wrong in my life. Nobody in my family has ever done anything wrong in my life, period. It's like I am related to, I also have English ancestors. And I'm pretty sure everyone knows that the English had caused so much suffering for the Irish, which are also my ancestors. And for many, many indigenous peoples all throughout history, you have to acknowledge that, as well as other stuff. And it's like Rome. I can't say the Romans or any have done much better because there's obviously been a lot of war, a lot of pain, a lot of hardship. You have to acknowledge that when that's part of your culture, especially if you're involved in it and part of your spiritual practice. You can't just act and say, oh no, my culture's baby. Yeah, Italian people have suffered immensely, specifically because of fascism and because of how they were treated in America when they first came here. But also, there's now, there were Italian Americans for Trump, when Trump was running, who advocated for hatefulness. There are Italian American people and Italian people who tried to advocate for Christopher Columbus despite what a horrible, horrible piece of shit he was. You have to acknowledge when there's problems. It's like, I find out there's someone in my family from years ago who's a Klansman. You have to acknowledge that. You have to work through that and heal that for yourself. That doesn't mean that you have to be close to this ancestor at all by any means, but it is something that affects you because everything that your ancestors have done in past days affects you now. My mom tells me all the time how I do something that my grandpa used to do that was very harmful, or something that I've unlearned that he used to do that was harmful. I'm like, oh my god, no wonder this was the man who worked with me the most when I first got into working with ancestors, who's always telling me, you have to do this, you have to go make things right. This person is horrible for you, why are you talking to them, get rid of them, they're just going to harm you. And he truly did. He told me so much. Same with my grandma, so many things I take after her with, or even my great great grandma, couldn't even know her family, and it's so crazy that I'm always told I'm so much like that woman because she also lost out on having her family and had to create her own family like I do. Different reasons, of course, but it's still so wild that these things come in generational cycles, and that's how come if you do have a generational curse, family curse, anything like that, you absolutely should do anything in your power to get rid of it. I am still working on it. I've broken a lot of my generational curse, but generational curses also take generations to break. Like, I know that my great grandma worked on breaking hers. Towards the end of her life, my grandma worked on breaking hers. My mom has worked on breaking hers. I'm working on breaking mine. It's going to be easier for my kids when I have them, but it's still going to be there. They're still going to have parts of the curse to break, and I'm sure that their kids will, and their kids will, and it's just going to go down the line until it's completely healed. But the good thing is that, like, people have been working at it. You can make it better. And if this is you, then absolutely there are ways to work on it. And the very first suggestion that I do make is get to know the ancestors. Whatever ancestors you have, give them some water, light them a little white candle, talk to them, ask them for help, ask them for guidance, see what they have to say. Even if it seems like nothing, usually most of the time I find that it is something. There have been many times where I figured, oh, something is just a little weird coincidence, no big deal. And then to find out, then ancestor is trying to point something out to me, trying to teach me something. So listen to them. They know what they're talking about. And if you practice any kind of divination, it's definitely worth it to talk to them about that. Stuff like that. Anyway, I'll go more into that in another video because this video is already pretty long. I rambled for long enough. Thank you very much for watching this, and Sa Benedica.